Part 3, The Fall of Vel-Wrath. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity turned the tide of the war. The stolen Varric became a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope for enslaved species across the stars. But humanity wasn't content with just one victory. They had a plan so audacious that even the Corran Dominion, with all its arrogance, could never have anticipated it. The target was Vel-Wrath, a heavily fortified supply world deep in Dominion territory. Vel-Wrath was the lifeblood of the Dominion's war machine, fueling their fleets and arming their soldiers. To strike at Vel-Wrath was to strike at the heart of the Dominion itself. Admiral Kasari stood in the war room on Earth, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. "Vel-Wrath is the key," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "If we can cripple their supply lines, we can cripple their entire empire." But Vel-Wrath was no easy target. Orbital defenses, garrison forces, and an entire fleet stationed nearby made a full-scale invasion impossible. Humanity would have to fight smarter, not harder. Captain Rohr and his crew aboard the Varric were tasked with leading the assault. The plan was simple: infiltrate the system under false Dominion identification codes, disable the orbital defenses, and then unleash hell. As the Varric approached Vel-Wrath, the crew prepared for the mission. Harper and her tech team worked tirelessly to ensure their false codes would hold. Rohr stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the star-filled void ahead. "This is it," he said to his crew. "We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. No hesitation. No mercy." The Varric slipped into the Vel-Wrath system undetected, its Dominion codes granting it access past the outer patrols. The Corrans, still reeling from their defeat at Grom 4, had no idea what was coming. As the Varric approached the orbital defenses, Harper's team activated the kill switch. Before the battle, they had rigged the ship's fuel core to detonate in a controlled chain reaction. It was a suicide mission, but one that would cripple the Dominion's war effort. Rohr's final transmission to the Corran command was simple. "Congratulations," he said, his voice filled with dark amusement. "You just lost another planet." The Varric collided with Vel-Wrath's main supply hub, its overloaded fuel core detonating in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave ripped through the planet's surface, obliterating fuel depots, supply chains, and military installations. The Dominion's war machine in that sector was crippled, their fleets left stranded without fuel or ammunition. On Earth, Admiral Kasari watched the feed from Vel-Wrath, a rare smile crossing her face. "They thought they could erase us," she said to her officers. "Now they're learning the cost of underestimating humanity." Across the galaxy, the fall of Vel-Wrath sent shockwaves through the Dominion. Species that had once cowered under their rule began to stir, their fear replaced by a flicker of hope. If humanity could strike at the heart of the Dominion, then maybe, just maybe, the Empire wasn't as invincible as it seemed. The spark of rebellion. The destruction of Vel-Wrath was more than just a military victory, it was a psychological one. The Dominion's enslaved species, long oppressed and broken, began to rise up. On Corran-controlled worlds, insurgencies flared up, supply lines were sabotaged, and patrols were ambushed. On the planet Kale Prime, a slave species known as the Valens staged a revolt. Armed with stolen weapons and fueled by centuries of pent-up rage, they overwhelmed their Corran overseers, freeing their world from Dominion control. The news spread like wildfire. The Dominion, once feared and unchallenged, was now vulnerable. And humanity, the so-called infestation, was leading the charge. The Dominion's desperation. Deep in Dominion space, the Corran High Council convened in a state of panic. Admiral Rannick slammed his fist against the table, his mandibles flaring in frustration. "This cannot continue," he roared. "The humans must be eradicated. All of them." But how? The humans didn't fight like any species the Dominion had ever encountered. They didn't fight for territory or resources. They fought to kill, to destroy, to annihilate. They are not just an enemy, one of the counselors said, his voice cold with realization. They are a plague. And if we do not stop them, they will consume us all. The Dominion's arrogance had been their downfall. They had awakened something far worse than an enemy, they had awakened humanity. The next target. Back on Earth, Admiral Kasari stood before the United Earth Military Command, her eyes burning with determination. Velrath was just the beginning, she said. The Dominion's grip on the galaxy is weakening. Now is the time to strike at their heart. The next target was the Corran home world, the seat of their empire. It was a fortress, protected by layers of defenses and an entire fleet. But humanity had a plan so insane that no Corran admiral would ever see it coming. Operation Executioner was about to begin. Part 1, The Declaration of Extinction. The Corran Dominion had ruled the galaxy for millennia, their fleets unstoppable, their empire unchallenged. They had erased civilizations, enslaved species, and spread fear across the stars. But when they declared war on humanity, they made a fatal mistake. Admiral Rannick of the Corran Dominion stood before the Galactic Council, his mandibles clicking with arrogance. Humans are an infestation, he declared. A mistake of evolution. They will be erased from existence, as if they never were. The message echoed through space, reaching every human colony, outpost, and Earth itself. Billions of humans heard those words, and billions clenched their fists in defiance. For most species, such a declaration would have meant surrender. But humanity was different. On the colony world of Grom 4, the first battle of the war was already underway. The Corran invasion force had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they found themselves in a bloodbath. Major Elias Carter crouched behind a barricade, his armor scorched, his face streaked with blood. The streets of New Moscow were littered with Corran bodies, their dark blue blood staining the ruins. Status. Carter barked into his comms. Still holding, sir, came the reply from Lieutenant Vasquez. Her unit was holding the western flank, preventing the Corrans from encircling them. But we need more ammo. Those bastards just keep coming. Carter grimaced. Grom 4 was doomed. The Corrans had sent a full invasion force, and no help was coming. Earth's fleets were still mobilizing. Their orders were simple: make the Corrans bleed. Hold as long as you can. The Corrans had expected humanity to fall to their knees. Instead, they got a response. A single video was sent back to the Dominion's high command. The sender was a human soldier, battle-worn, standing in front of the ruined city of New Moscow. Congratulations, the soldier said, his voice calm, almost amused. You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species. The transmission ended, and the war began. On Grom 4, the humans didn't fight fair. They struck from the shadows, planted traps, and lured the Corrans into ambushes. Every street the Corrans took, they paid for in blood. The Corrans thought humanity would be an easy conquest. They were wrong. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. Other civilizations, long cowed by the Corran Dominion, watched in disbelief as humans fought back. And then something happened that no one had expected. The Dominion's High Council received a report that chilled them to their cores. The humans had taken a Corran warship. Against all odds, a small human strike team had infiltrated a Dominion battleship, slaughtered its crew, and hijacked it. No species had ever done that before. For the first time in Corran history, they felt something unfamiliar: fear. Part 4, Operation Executioner. The Corran home world was the heart of their empire, a fortress planet surrounded by layers of orbital defenses, fleets of warships, and a network of impenetrable shields. No species had ever dared to strike at it. Until now. Admiral Kasari stood in the war room on Earth, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. The Corran home world glowed ominously at the center, a symbol of their dominance. But Kasari saw something else, a target. "Operation Executioner begins today," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "We hit them where it hurts. We hit them at home." The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. Instead of a full-scale invasion, humanity would send a small fleet of stealth ships deep into Dominion territory. Their mission: disable the planetary defenses, assassinate the Corran Emperor, and cripple the Dominion's command structure. Captain Roar, now a legend among human forces, was chosen to lead the mission. His crew aboard the Varrock had proven their worth at Grom 4 and Vel Rath. Now, they would face their greatest challenge yet. The infiltration. The stealth ships slipped past the Dominion's outer patrols, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to enemy sensors. The Corrans had spent centuries preparing for massive armadas, not a handful of carefully placed operatives. As the ships approached the Corran home world, Roar addressed his team. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "We've taken their ships, their worlds, and their pride. Now, we take their leader." The first phase of the operation was to disable the planetary defenses. Harper and her tech team infiltrated the outer space stations, planting explosives along key defense grids. The Corrans, still reeling from the fall of Vel Rath, had no idea what was coming. "Detonations in place," Harper reported. "On your command, Captain." Roar nodded. "Do it." The explosives detonated in perfect synchronization, crippling half of the Corran planetary defenses. The once impenetrable fortress was now vulnerable. The assault. With the defenses down, the real attack began. The stealth ships descended on the Corran home world, their rail guns firing at key infrastructure sites. Military installations were reduced to rubble, supply hubs turned to dust, and communication networks were severed. The Corran command structure was in chaos. Generals screamed orders that no one could follow. Warships scrambled to launch, only to be shot down before they left the atmosphere. On the ground, Roar and his team moved swiftly through the chaos. Their target, the Corran Emperor, the symbol of Dominion supremacy. The Emperor's fall. Deep in the heart of the Corran capital, the Emperor sat in his palace, surrounded by his advisors. The once mighty ruler of the Dominion stared at the holographic feeds in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. They are weak." A nearby officer trembled as he spoke. "My lord, the humans are here." The doors to the chamber exploded, smoke and fire filling the room as Roar and his team stormed in. Human soldiers, covered in blood and battle scars, pointed their weapons at the most feared leader in the galaxy. Roar stepped forward, his face unreadable. "You declared war on humanity," he said coldly. The Emperor, once so arrogant, so untouchable, now cowered before them. Roar raised his pistol. "Big mistake," he said. "One shot." The Corran Emperor was dead. The aftermath. Across the Dominion, the news spread like wildfire. The Emperor was dead. Their home world was in ruins. Their fleets were broken. Without leadership, without fear keeping them in line, the Dominion's enslaved species finally rose up. Planets revolted. Corran military officers were assassinated in their own command centers. Slave armies turned on their masters, slaughtering them without mercy. The Dominion was falling apart. Humanity's triumph. Back on Earth, Admiral Kasari stood before the United Earth Military Command, her face broadcasted across every colony, outpost, and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "It is about dominance. And humanity has won." The cheers erupted across Earth and every human colony. The Corran Dominion, the once invincible empire, had been brought to its knees. But humanity wasn't done. The hunt continues. As the Dominion crumbled, humanity turned its attention to the rest of the galaxy. Species that had once cowered under Dominion rule now looked to humanity as their liberators. But not everyone celebrated. Some civilizations trembled at the rise of this new power. For the galaxy had learned a terrifying truth: you don't declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you don't get a war. You get extinction. Part 2, The Stolen Warship. The Varrock, a Dominion battleship designed for planetary sieges, had been one of the most powerful vessels in the Corran fleet. It was meant to be unstoppable, a symbol of Dominion supremacy. Now, it belonged to humanity. Inside the bridge of the captured warship, Captain Daniel Rohr stood over the command console, his hands still shaking from the sheer insanity of what they had just pulled off. He glanced around at his team, Marines, engineers, and hackers, most of them still covered in Corran blood. "We actually did it," whispered Lieutenant Harper, her eyes wide. "Damn right we did," Rohr said. "Now let's make sure it was worth it." The Corrans had underestimated humanity's adaptability. They thought their ships were too complex, their systems too alien. But humans had spent centuries reverse-engineering everything they got their hands on. The moment they had control of the ship, Harper and her tech team had ripped into its systems like scavengers on a fresh kill. Rohr turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Kasari. Earth needs to hear about this." The transmission was sent in seconds, bouncing through secured human military channels. It didn't take long for an answer. The face of Admiral Kasari, leader of Earth's defense fleet, appeared on the main screen. Her normally cold, calculating expression broke for just a second, an emotion between shock and exhilaration flashing across her features. "You're telling me," she said, her voice controlled but sharp, "that you've hijacked a Corran battleship?" Rohr smirked. "We didn't just hijack it, Admiral. We're about to use it." The Dominion was scrambling. No species had ever stolen one of their ships before. It was an insult, an impossibility. The Corran High Council was in an uproar, their arrogant confidence shaken. But humanity wasn't done humiliating them. Instead of fleeing with their prize, Rohr and his team turned the Varrock against its former masters. As a Corran fleet approached Grom 4 to reinforce their ground forces, the stolen battleship opened fire. The first ship to go down didn't even raise shields, it never expected one of its own to turn against it. A direct hit from the Varrock's forward plasma cannon ripped it apart. The second ship managed to react, but too late. Harper had cracked into the Dominion's fleet security codes, disguising their communications. For precious minutes, the enemy hesitated, confused, unsure whether the Varrock had been compromised or if this was some kind of trick. That hesitation cost them. The human fleet, now mobilized and coming in hot, dropped out of hyperspace. And then, for the first time in history, a Corran fleet was ambushed. On the ground, Major Carter and his resistance fighters watched as fire rained from the sky. At first, they assumed the worst, more Corran reinforcements. But then Carter's comms crackled to life. "Major, this is Captain Rohr aboard the Varrock. We're giving these bastards a taste of their own medicine." Carter stared at the sky, watching the once invincible Dominion forces panic. A slow grin spread across his bloodied face. "About damn time," he muttered. The impossible had happened. The Dominion had declared war on humanity, but now, for the first time, they realized their mistake. They hadn't declared war on just another species. They had declared war on the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. And humanity was just getting started.